What would you do if, in an attempt to add some more technology to your home, to maybe make everyday life easier for you, to be able to free up time for things that matter to you, like your family or your friends or any hobbies that you might have going on, you inadvertently let something into your home that shouldn't be there, something malicious, something trying to attack you? What if this technology actually, instead of helping you, ended up working to kill you? Well, that will be the topic of today's story. So hopefully you stick around to the end to learn what our protagonist for today does to get out. This story was posted to the r/nosleep subreddit by availableclass2481, and it is entitled, Buying a Robot Vacuum Changed My Life in a Terrifying Way. Hello everybody, I'm Cece with the Crucible character, and before we start today's story, I'd like to remind you that if you enjoy these content and these videos that I make, please like, comment, and subscribe. It means the world to me, and if you are sure to subscribe, then you won't miss out when I post tomorrow's video as well. Anyways, into the story. Let me be clear, I'm not bougie. I'm barely scraping through grad school with enough for groceries, but I occasionally splurge every few months. Last time, me and my boyfriend got an air fryer. This time, we got one of those automatic vacuums. I'd always wanted a pet, but it took some convincing for me to like the idea of a robot mapping my house. I figured with no neighborhood cats around to adopt, I might as well embrace the next best thing. We lovingly named it Toto. And while it took me a few weeks to warm up to him, I'd say that I liked him more than my boyfriend ever did. We even put some glow-in-the-dark, googly eyes on him to accentuate his personality. I've always been bad about cleaning, so it was a big help, but I couldn't get over the sound it made. Don't get me wrong, they were completely normal. It was just bumps and knocks from the other room, but something about it made me jump. I can't help but imagine someone else knocking around in my apartment when I hear bumps in the night or day. I started to feel like the vacuum was a bad idea. Like Toto, might bump the ankles of whatever is hiding behind a curtain and provoke it to finally attack me. I've always been afraid of that sort of thing, though. I used to talk to shadows when I was a kid. I think I was trying to reclaim some of that fear I felt when staring into a blank corner, eyes swimming for details that aren't there. By impressing myself on that darkness, I was removing any space for the boogeyman to hide. And if he were standing in the corner, just out of my vision, then maybe I would annoy him into getting it over with. I admired how Toto could plunge directly into the darkness without fear or worry, eyes fading into the blackness. It was sort of like having a dog in the apartment. I tried to convince myself that I didn't need to worry about any hidden intruders. Toto's ears would perk up, and he would beep, dutifully alerting me to danger. Between my boyfriend, myself, and Astro Dog, things were perfect and well kept. We hardly ever had to make any to-do lists and maintained a healthy chore-life balance. Soon, though, I noticed that cabinets were being left open, and items of mine were being left in strange spots. Sometimes, Toto would get stuck on a pair of my underwear or a sock. I know dudes sometimes like to grab a piece of their girlfriend's clothes for inspiration, but this was getting weird, and quick. I eventually confronted him after I found one of my favorite bottoms, dampened by what seemed to be saliva. It smelled awful. He insisted it wasn't him, that I was being crazy, that maybe Toto has a crush. I guess things weren't as perfect as I had thought, because that schism grew until we could no longer stand each other. At least, I got full custody of Toto. It took a while to get used to sleeping alone again, so I started staying up later. No boyfriend smell to lull me back to sleep anymore. I never slept without a lamp, but would still find myself talking to that veil of shadow that hung over the furthest corner of my room. I know you're there. This time it seemed my accusations were answered. I heard rustling from beyond my vision, back in my closet. I honestly half expected someone or something to emerge slowly from the darkness, but it was just Toto's bright green eclipses gliding across the floor. I need to get out of this house more. I did just that. I went out drinking with some of my cohorts and ended up getting a little trashier than I meant to. As soon as I got home, I collapsed on the sofa. As I said earlier, I'm not the cleanest person ever, but I'm not the kind of person to forget and misplace. That's why I got so nervous when I came home to find that my perfumes had been completely rearranged. Toto was whirring around in the other room, but I knew there was no way him bumping the shelf could do anything like this. Some bottles faced different ways and were in a completely different order than I had left them. This wasn't like Toto choking on a sock. Someone had entered my bathroom and purposely moved my property, and I had enough proof to dispel any positive thinking. I immediately contacted my property manager's emergency line to make sure my ex returned his key, and that no maintenance workers had been in my room that day. The anticipation of the 30-second hold was enough to make me shed tears. I paced the bathroom. I was convinced that someone had a key and was parading around in my apartment when I wasn't home. Despite how late it was, they answered. Somehow, the knowledge that no one entered my apartment that day put me even further over the edge, rather than at ease. I was alone, confused, a little drunk, and sure that I was being harassed. That was when Toto started beeping. I've only ever heard him make that sound a few times before. Once when he turned onto his side over the edge of one of my platform shoes I left out. Another when my ex had picked him up like a baby. I turned to my bedroom, which I could clearly peer into from where I stood. 2 green eclipses hanging at eye level. I froze. I don't know for how long. I honestly believe that Toto had sprouted legs for a moment. That was when my eyes started to adjust. Slowly, I began to make out the shape that was suspending Toto in the darkness, inspecting the bottom of his carriage, its long, curious fingers, pried at the seams, the same fashion in which King Kong would pull at the jaws of Godzilla. It seemed frustrated. Something about Toto perplexed the thing, but I couldn't tell its facial features or what emotions it was feeling. All I could make out was limbs and hair. Suddenly, it dropped Toto with a careless thud. Sharp bits of plastic scattered into the darkness as Toto struggled on its back. He squirmed and reached for the pieces of himself in the same desperate manner as a dog who was trying to consume its own throw-up, beeping the whole time. The thing remained where it stood, but now it was looking towards the bathroom. I could see it through the mirror as I sunk behind the door, peering at its reflection through the crack in the hinges. It was a good foot taller than me, but when it shifted its weight, not a pop or crack came from the floorboards. It was impossibly thin, and I swear I could see its chest shifting under its hairy skin, even in the dark. The sounds of Toto's struggle made it hard to focus on anything, but I could clearly hear the figure speak over the noise. It was a mimic of my own voice. "I know you're there." It didn't move, and neither did I. We both just stared at each other through the mirror. I don't think it could really see me, and if it could, it was just my panicked eyeball. Maybe a strand of hair hanging through the edge of the doorframe. It probably couldn't even make out what I was, but it knew I was there. Maybe it hoped I couldn't see it. I wondered if this is what it felt like for the boogeyman, when I would call into the darkness, hoping to rattle whatever might be watching me. But this time, I was the one who was sinking into the shadows, doubling down on my hiding spot, never breaking for a second. I realized that the real boogeyman isn't the one who attacks children in the dead of night. Rather, he's a voyeur, a watcher. I waited and watched for I don't know how long, and so did it. The hours ticked by slowly, and Toto still lay upside down in the same spot. But by now, his battery had died. The beeping had stopped. I could hear the figure breathing, chirping. It almost sounded cute, like a cat or ferret. The sun started to trickle through the window from the spare room, but since I have blackout curtains in my bedroom, the light only made it harder for me to see the figure. I could tell it was moving, slowly shifting back into the cover of darkness, under my bed. The closet? Was it folding into itself, into an unused drawer, or under my mattress? Where did it go when I was here? The fear of wondering was enough to propel me towards the bedroom light switch, but as soon as I emerged from behind the door, it ran out of the darkness, screaming. I say ran, but I'm not sure if it even touched the floor. All 6 limbs worked in perfect coordination to propel itself as quickly as possible towards the front door of my apartment. It grasped at corners and high edges of the ceiling with all of its hands, and its tiny body floated almost gracefully past me. That grace was immediately shattered when it disappeared past the corner of my living room. I heard it banging hard into the front door. It was like when a deer gets stuck behind a fence, so they just keep slamming, hoping to free themselves through sheer perseverance. I rounded the corner to see it in a ball, using all 6 limbs to slam its mass into the door, just a hairy crumple of willfully weird flesh. It shrieked at the sight of me to realize I was following. I was its boogeyman. As I got closer, it cowered further into the corner, releasing some awful-smelling liquid into my shoe rack. I realized it had no legs, only long arms. It looked like a giant dust bunny, with tufts of long black hair coming off its limbs. I couldn't tell where its head was anymore, but it just kept backing up until it was completely squished in the corner, a quarter of its original size. I braced myself and opened the door. While it took some time to find its way out, like a fly through a car window, I could tell it was relieved. It flung itself off my balcony with renewed grace and disappeared into the tall grass of the field next to my apartment. I considered moving out after everything was over. I've got a new roommate now, all things considered. She's a lot more stable than my ex was, and quite cute too. I haven't seen the figure since. I released it from my apartment. I don't even know how it got in. Maybe, just like an insect, You open the door for a split second, and by its own it just shoots right in there and stays until you let it out. The only thing that keeps me from attributing the whole thing to a psychotic break are the chirps and purrs I hear in the morning when I walk to my car. There's no cats in my neighborhood, so I like to think it's Toto number 2 saying good morning. I leave leftovers next to the field sometimes, but only chicken ever gets taken off the plate. The end. That was really interesting. There's definitely a lot going on there. I was totally expecting it to be the kind of robo-cleaner. I had a really hard time kind of picturing the robo-cleaner. Was it kind of like a dog, or was it just that they were kind of personifying it as a dog? I will have to reread it and try and understand that better. But it's an interesting creature, that's for sure. I think a few takeaways I have immediately, or how we could have done better in this situation, or at least how I would have done better, is 1, having strategic weapons throughout your house is straight up not a bad idea. I mean, that's a simple one, right? I have knives and things in my room. I have knives in the bathroom, just in case, I know that there are lots who like to use guns and some who would rather use a sword or whatever. But I think having a plan in case there's somebody who breaks into your house from any point of your house that you can say, okay, I am here. How can I get out? What's the smartest plan here? Another takeaway, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that this takes place now because it doesn't specify any other time period. So for those of you who don't know, you can text, if you're in the United States, you can text 911 that you need help. So yeah, just keep that in mind. If you're in that situation where you're kind of trapped in your bathroom in a one entrance and exit type of apartment, and there's something in between you and the door, you can text 911 if you're trying to be sneaky. And I don't think it would be completely irrational to have kind of swatted yourself in that situation. I think I probably would have tried to do that. Say, just text 911 and say, hey, somebody's holding me hostage in my own apartment. They're in here and you need to come quick. And sure enough, SWAT team should be there in like 20 minutes. So yeah. Because she was in that bathroom for hours and hours, it said. So that's probably what I would have done. I think, yeah, there's a lot more to be taken away, kind of less physical and more metaphorical, in that she really has a desire to not be scared and to truly see it as just a kind of helpless bug creature type of thing. In the end, especially when she let it out of her apartment and just let it keep going. Or when she fed it afterwards, when she realized it wasn't all that bad or didn't really have all that malicious intent for her, it just had gotten trapped in her house. I don't know that very many people would do that, but I do think it is important to remember, and if there is one character takeaway that we can take away from this, it's to truly give things and people the benefit of the doubt. Start with love and not with hate, and no matter what some looks like. That's just an important thing. But anyways, that's going to wrap up today's video, everybody. Again, I'm CC with the Crucible of Character, and if you like these stories, please let me know. Please let me know your thoughts. What would you have done in this situation? Make sure to comment below. And if you're excited for tomorrow's video, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss it. The odds of me ending up on your page more than once are very, very slim. So please, if you enjoyed the video and you don't mind seeing these videos on your homepage of YouTube often, make sure to drop a subscribe. It means the world to me. I love you all. Bye.